Bama at Texas A&M. It's a 3:30 Eastern kick on CBS this Saturday. A lot of folks thought we were going to be at this game. It was a 55-45 sort of thing, but we chose Red River. But this is where you better get Alabama. I strongly feel like Alabama is facing their toughest remaining test this Saturday in this game. A lot of folks out there pull against Alabama. Pretty much you got Bama fans and then the rest of the world roots against them. That's the price for being the king as long as they've been the king. Well, if this is their toughest test, then that means they're on upset alert, right? I don't even call it upset alert. When you're favored by under a field goal, it's a coin flip. It's not upset alert anything. It's not an upset if Texas A&M wins this game. I cannot overstate how radically the tone shifts. 4 ways. It was one of those classic 4-way tone shifters, as Meemaw would call it, that we've got coming up Saturday. If Bama wins the thing, they will have faced the most physical team they'll face the rest of the way. In the most hostile environment they'll face the rest of the way. And that will be 2 weeks in a row where they face stiff competition in one. And people will say Alabama's once again a prime contender for the SEC and beyond. If Bama loses, I don't think you're ready for how toxic that conversation will be around Tuscaloosa, but I think you get exactly where I'm going with that. If Texas A&M wins, they are the favorite in the SEC West. Period. End of sentence. Case closed. And if they lose, I don't think you're ready for how toxic the conversation in College Station will be, particularly around Jimbo Fisher. Because what they'll say, and they wouldn't be wrong in saying this, what they'll say is, losing to Bama, that's understandable. Why are we a 2-loss team right now? Why did Miami hang half 100 on us? How did we let that happen? How are we once again barely above 500 as we just get into October? Mark my words, 4-way tone shifter right here. Alabama's offensive line faces their final test Saturday. Now, you may think, what in the world are you talking about? It's early October. How's that a final test? Because they can't afford to lose the game, and it's the most vulnerable unit on this team. That's why it's their final test. They're not undefeated. They've already got a loss. There is zero margin for error. Their back is not against a wall. Their back is up against a cliff. And if they get pushed back any further, it's a long way down. It's a great song by Goo Goo Dolls. It's on the Twister soundtrack, Long Way Down. Look it up, kids. But also, it's a long way down, and I don't think the numbers necessarily favor this team, but I'll tell you what that means. That just means you have to be a version of yourselves you haven't been so far this year. That's really all that means. They are second worst. So here's the mismatch. If you want to talk about what paper says, this stuff where games aren't played, paper says this doesn't look good for Alabama. Second worst sack rate allowed in FBS. A&M's defense, conversely, the best sack rate in all of college football. And they got home field at their back. So that sounds like a mismatch, doesn't it? Second most tackles for loss in college football. Texas A&M as well. Bama struggled with it all year. You want to set yourself up behind the chains consistently Saturday? You want to count on throwing the football in that environment to win? If those numbers hold, that's the position they'll be in. A&M secondary, their numbers look good. Okay, I think they're like 9th in the country in pass yards allowed. So that's good. That's a wonderful number on the surface, but when you dive deeper, you realize when you throw it 30 or more yards in the air against that A&M secondary, the Tyler Van Dyke protocol, as we would call it, they're a little more vulnerable. Can Alabama do that? And I'm not asking, can Milroe physically do it? Of course he can. He throws a beautiful deep ball. Will he have time to? Will their receivers get open consistently enough? Those are the questions. In other words, I'm circling A&M's biggest defensive vulnerability. Is this the team? Is this Alabama team capable of exploiting and exposing that? If they are, they'll win the game. Alabama, actually, if they can expose that, they're capable of pulling away, just like Miami did. I don't know if they're capable of exploiting it, and that's why I seesawed on this thing all day. Immunity. Jimbo Fisher, Bobby Petrino. One thing you need to know about them is they have absolute confidence in Max Johnson. So America is going to probably pull up to the table around Friday afternoon and start thinking about this game. And they're going to say, a backup quarterback against Nick Saban's defense? Jimbo Fisher can't win the big one. Bobby Petrino, the scarred up face guy? That's the casual for you. The more advanced college football mind, which we sometimes pretend to be around here, understands two things. Max Johnson's about 37 years old. He's got a lot of experience. He is not your Meemaw's backup, in other words. And secondly, they're not going to hide him. Fisher and Petrino will not hide Max Johnson against Alabama Saturday. They will put the game in his hands, and they won't be terrified to do it either. Deep ball is also a key for Texas A&M. Quinn Ewers in Texas had some success, didn't they? Throwing the ball down the field against Alabama. In fact, anybody who's beaten Alabama found out how to throw the ball down the field and down the middle of the field. In most cases, that's where the success is had. I was at this game last year. I was on the field for this game last year. Evan Stewart, he caught one of those deep balls. Moose Mohammed, he caught one of those deep balls. And I had stats and info check. But turns out both of those players still play for Texas A&M. Anaya Smith does too, and he didn't play in this game last year. And he says it's personal for him this year. I don't care how personal it is. I couldn't care less if Anaya Smith has never heard of Nick Saban or Alabama. He's a good enough football player to single-handedly change the outcome just by himself, just by showing up. A&M's offensive line, improving. I think it's safe to say they've been improving week over week, pass pro and run blocking. Alabama's front seven against them. Don't think for a second Bama can't take this game over defensively. Sounds like I'm down on them. I'm not. I'm actually sky high on Alabama's defense. That is another reason why I seesawed on picking this game, one way or another, all day. Texas took the physical fight to Alabama. Texas was the more physical team. Texas actually made Bama look like the road team in their own building. I've never seen it before. Texas A&M's fully capable of doing that too. You know, Texas A&M's got those kind of horses too. It's what they'll have to do Saturday. I know what past Alabama teams would do in this situation, and it may not be pretty. I know what they'd do. They would go in and they would lock the door behind them, and they'd be the one that emerged. Two would go in, they'd lock the door, and one would emerge, and it would be Bama, because they could beat you in a fight. And I'm not sure if this turns into that kind of fight Saturday, if Alabama wins that. And if that upsets some people, so be it. There's an easy way to shut folks up when they say that, and they hadn't done it so far this year. Now, as much as I say that, I think back to last week, and I think back to the second half of that game. It's the best Bama's looked all year. That's what gave me, again, a reason to seesaw. Because if I package up not just the execution, but if I package up the speed and physicality they played with in the second half against Ole Miss, I'll take that, man. You don't have to light it up offensively. I'll take that because you don't have to score a ton if you play that way. So with that in mind, Colin, could I please see what the model thinks? And let's talk about what Vegas thinks. Bama minus 2.5 right now is the number. Out in the desert, but depending on what state you live in, it could just be on your mobile device. The model is even closer than that. We got Bama minus 1.5. I think this is Texas A&M's time, and I think they are a surging football team. I think Bama may be as well, but I don't know if that second half last week is just a second half last week. And I keep going back to this. I keep going back to Bama on the road the last couple of years and how they haven't looked like vintage Bama teams. I'd be happy to change my tune on that. They've got to change it. And so until I see it, I'm not changing my tune. I'm taking Texas A&M to win the game. Therefore, I obviously think Texas A&M covers the game. I cannot stress enough how little confidence I have in this. This will be a viewership-only special for me. There will not be a dime placed on this game. I promise you, well, I virtually promise you, we will either lead the show with it Sunday night or it will be right near the top of the show because this one has major consequences. Jesse told me today Texas A&M's not ranked, which is whatever. We'll do the JP poll later. I'll show you where they should be in a power rating. This right here is Bama's toughest test remaining. I know who else they got to play. I know they got Tennessee. I know they got LSU. I know where they play them too. And I know how physical Texas A&M can be. Now, that's no guarantee they're going to follow through on it, but this right here is the matchup. This is the toughest one. Alabama knows it. That coaching staff knows it. Practice this week in Tuscaloosa is reflecting it. They know sledgehammer fight in College Station Saturday. If they survive this one, I don't think Bama's losing the rest of the way. But I just picked them to lose Saturday. So we'll see. Double paper pop. We'll see.